the swamp proves almost impossible to penetrate. Beneath the water lies a thick layer of matted vegetation. Sawgrass cuts and tangles the rescuers as they try to move forward.
What is your full name, please?
Jesse Lowell Fisher.
And your occupation?
As the search for clues gets underway, safety board experts interview the last person who spoke to Flight 592.
What is your date of birth, please?
Air traffic controller Jesse Fisher. They discovered that the crew reported smoke on board minutes before the crash. And that suggests only one thing: a fire somewhere on the plane.
So the focus now becomes what's the origin of the fire that would create enough smoke for the crew to not only notice it, but have to report it.
One answer could lie in Valujet's recent history. Could this be a repeat of the 1995 incident? Could some kind of engine failure have led, even indirectly, to the loss of a second aircraft? Valujet alone has 47 other DC-9s in their fleet. Could they all have faulty engines? Thousands more passengers might be at risk. Seconds from Disaster will continue. And now back to Seconds from Disaster. Conditions at the site where Valujet 592 crashed are hazardous. There's a constant threat from alligators, attracted by the search activity, the wreck, and its contents. Armed guards are deployed to keep the predators away. To make matters worse, the airboats and search teams are stirring up the silt layer, reducing visibility below the water from just a few inches to none. Then, in an attempt to see through the murky water, the team brings in ground-penetrating radar. They find a thick layer of mud below the water level. And below that, 7 feet down, solid limestone. The plane smashed into thousands of pieces as it hit the rock. The team starts to piece together the recovered debris at nearby Kendall Tamiami Airport, where safety board specialists will examine it. But early analysis of the engine wreckage offers little hope of an easy answer. Plane debris, sawgrass, and swamp mud are buried deep in the engine casings. Greg Feith knows that this is likely to happen only if they were working normally on impact. While he can't rule out engine malfunction, now it's not likely to be the cause of the crash. Solving the mystery will require all the experience the NTSB has to offer. Senior board members like John Goglia, a DC-9 expert, is brought in. Even for him, the huge loss of life is hard to accept.
You still feel the pressure on your emotions, knowing that 110 people have died right in this area where you're working, where you're recovering pieces. And it does eat on you.
For all the investigators, the search for clues is a grim task.
Every time I went out to the accident site, knowing that there were a lot of children on this flight, and you see the remnants, it was very emotionally, it's very heart-tugging. It was very, very difficult every single day.
Gradually, family members and the public learn the full scope of the tragedy.
When you go through something like this, you would give anything to have those people back in your life.
I can remember seeing those images of the crash, and it tore me apart.
I tried not to cry in front of my mother. I would go in the shower at night and just sob.
Slowly, sections of the DC-9 begin to take shape. The investigators painstakingly recover, decontaminate, and identify thousands of pieces. There are two parts that would help the investigation: the flight data and cockpit voice recorders. But the black boxes, as they're often called, remain stubbornly hidden in the swamp.
Without them, it would have made the investigative process very difficult because they were going to provide us with a lot of information.
The team carries on and finds that even without the black boxes, the wreckage in the hangar does begin to yield useful information. Metal seat frames melted. Carpets and fuselage coverings burned intensely. It becomes clear that the smoke First Officer Hazen reported had come from a blazing fire, one hot enough to melt aluminum. But even for DC-9 expert John Goglia, the source of such an inferno is a mystery.
We knew that there was an intense fire. What that meant, how that happened, was eluding us.
Then, as a police team fans out across the muddy pools of swamp water, an officer steps on something solid, a moment captured on camera. It's the FDR, or Flight Data Recorder, a major find.
Damn, we got a box.
If the box survived the crash intact, it will provide the team with key technical data from the flight, including airspeed, altitude, and the plane's movements in the air. Most importantly, it will tell them whether the plane's engines failed. But when technicians and officials at NTSB headquarters get their first look at the flight data recorder, they are not optimistic.
This flight data recorder took a severe hit, and when we first saw it in the laboratory, we had great concern that we were not going to get the data off of it.
While they wait, the NTSB team considers a new, sinister option. The fire was so sudden and the loss of controls so complete that a bomb has to be a possibility. Did a terrorist's bomb bring this plane down in the Everglades? The NTSB must figure out what caused the crash of Flight 592. Stay tuned for more Seconds from Disaster. You're watching Seconds from Disaster. What could have happened to an ordinary DC-9 on a routine flight to Atlanta? Could this vast swamp be the scene of a crime?
One of the things that we need to identify is whether this is a pure accident or an intentional act. If it's an intentional act, that means it's criminal.
Islamic extremist Ramzi Youssef is awaiting trial for the first bombing of the World Trade Center and for plotting to blow up American planes. With the Olympics so close, a major airline bombing would be just the type of attack needed to spread fear and anxiety at the Games. Working closely with FBI agents at the scene, investigators send samples of debris from the crash site to an FBI lab. There they will be analyzed for traces of explosives. It's a tense time, but then there's a big break in the investigation. After hours of delicate work, the NTSB's analysts managed to extract the data from the damaged flight data recorder. The evidence is stark. The aircraft seems to have been suffering multiple mechanical and electrical failures for over 2 minutes. Even the FDR itself seems to have failed about 55 seconds before impact. But the safety board can finally rule out engine failure as the cause of the disaster.
The performance